We're just about ready to kick June 2003 right in the backside and head into July and a wonderful summer in 2003.
June's been a good month too.
June's been a good month, but what a way to kick off the summer season that at the 5th annual Great Adirondack Antique and Classic Car Show, and now 14 other things we've thrown in with it.
Craft fairs, health and safety fair.
We've got Gary Douglas here from the Plattsburgh and North Country Chamber of Commerce. We talk several times during the year, and it's always a festive occasion.
It always is.
We just had our wonderful show at the Field House a few weeks ago, a mammoth success, and here we are at the 5th. Is it the 5th annual already?
5th annual already. Yep.
And we moved it this year.
Yeah, we're at the Clinton County Fairgrounds. And it's a beautiful sight, beautiful day. People are still bringing their cars in here to display them. They'll be doing that for a few more hours here, but they're already an amazing collection here to see already.
It's fun to be hooked up with a car show like this, especially when you're old, as I am. My brother Jim just came up to visit.
I'm catching up with you, my friend.
Yeah, I know, but you'll never get
there. Place
there.
is hurt that I didn't even know I had a few years ago.
I may be slow, but I'll still stay 20 years ahead of you. My brother Jim was just up visiting and just left from Pennsylvania, and he and I used to build old cars and hot rods and things in the 1950s, and he wanted to cancel his trips to Syracuse this afternoon to stay here for the show. I had him drooling so much by the time he drove out. He was whining and crying.
These Loziers.
Oh, my. This is a great fun. How did you ever get into a car show with the Chamber anyway?
Well, we look for events that certainly raise money for the Chamber to support our small business services and economic development and so on. So all of our events are certainly part of supporting the various things that we do. But we also have looked to develop events that have a business dimension to them. And we have a lot of members in the Chamber who collect and are involved in antique and classic cars, and really wanted to have a venue where they could come together once a year and display their things. But then we have sponsors and exhibitors here who are in one way or another in some facet of the car business. So it also helps them come out once a year and display what they do and interact with people who may do business with them. So there's a business dimension to this too. And then, of course, we embraced a couple of years ago the vision of Tony Vaccaro and many of his friends and colleagues who wanted to restore this Lozier over here and bring together a museum here in Plattsburgh, a Lozier and Transportation Museum for the North Country. It's happening. The Chamber is very proud to play just a small part in encouraging that and helping that to get started, and it's really coming together, not just these cars, but the whole project.
We've seen people with a lot of dreams since we came to Plattsburgh. I came here long before you did, and thanks to the great energy of people like you and Tony and many others, we're able to see a lot of those dreams come true.
The North Country isn't just dreaming anymore, it's doing.
It's doing.
It's not just thinking, it's not just the old days. People sat around and said, wouldn't it be nice if somebody? Yeah. Now it's, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we got together right now and did it?
Let's form a committee, as we used to do, and talk about it and give lots of lip service.
Until everybody's so tired they go away.
No. But this Lozier and Transportation Museum will happen just as the Interpretive Museum will happen on the base, and
it's all going to be a campus. And what's really terrific about that is that the museums are like other kinds of businesses, really. The more you have of them, it isn't that they compete with each other, they draw more people and they contribute to each other. So if you have the Transportation Museum, the War of 1812 Battle of Plattsburgh Museum, the air park and the other things going on at the base, and connect those with the other things downtown, the Kent Lord House, Clinton County Historical Museum may come out to the base. They're still taking a look at possibly joining this campus, so is the Council on the Arts. You start getting real synergy. Now people aren't going to one thing, they're going to one place where they're going to see 5 things. And that's more attractive. It'll bring more people.
It's going to be amazing. We saw in the paper a couple of days ago that the city of Plattsburgh Court is going to move out there. Mm-hmm. We know that we're going to have perhaps an international airport out there.
Not perhaps, it's happening.
It's going to happen in 3 years or 4 years. Yeah. You and I have been part of so many wonderful things that have happened over the last few years in the North Country. I'm glad to be here in a part of the country that's the right size to get all this accomplished. It's just big enough to throw a net. The net gets a little larger now that we've incorporated the
Montreal.
entire
Montreal
Champlain
is
region.
Plattsburgh's Quebec suburb, you know.
And the triad of excellence we just celebrated a few days ago, and yeah, we're drawing them back in. I mean, these are good times, and with weather, look at this.
Look at this.
Oh boy.
Emily. This man wants to put you on television.
Would you like to be on television?
This is Emily. She's 2.5 years old.
She's beautiful. See, you look right into that place
she's
right
two.
there. She's got the two, huh?
Yeah. Where do you live? She's shy like her father.
Yeah, can't you tell? It won't be long before she's speaking sentences, I can promise you that. You're a beautiful lady. Are you really two? Are you really 2 years old? See?
You're 2 and you live in the town of Peru.
Peru. She said Peru, that little tiny Peru. That's beautiful. Well, we're going to have fun. We're going to spend a couple hours around here getting this all on tape for posterity, as we have every other one that since you started 5 years ago. And
they all get a little bigger, a little better every year, thanks to my executive vice president, Jody Parks, and my staff, and a great team of volunteers who work on this all year long.
It's great. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting us, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Woof.
You're beautiful. Woof. Woof. See you later. If you were in Plattsburgh around 1915, and you had $3,250 in your pocket, you might have been able to buy the car behind me. In 2003, however, that wouldn't buy the back bumper or any other small part of this vehicle. This is the famous Lozier automobile that we've talked about and actually chronicled on Hometown Cable since Dr. Tony Vaccaro first dreamed about it. Tony, how are you?
Good. How are you, Gordy?
It's great to
it's
be
good
in
to see you back every year.
Wow, what a day.
Oh, it's just absolutely
Could you
gorgeous.
ever have ordered such a beautiful day?
The weather is perfect today. Absolutely perfect.
This Lozier is the it's a holy grail for you and for many other people who are coming here today, and this for you is a real dream come true.
Oh, it has. It has. It was. We didn't expect it to come out this well. We didn't realize what we had when we first purchased the car. We didn't realize how valuable and prominent the car is. The car just took a national first down in Orlando, Florida in March.
I read about that. Congratulations.
Well, that was a big award. It's a national award for the vehicle, and we're very pleased with it.
Well, it took how many years to restore it?
2.5, almost 3 years of work.
And it was done in Ontario?
Outside of Ontario, Eric Edwards, up in Baxter, Ontario. He did most of the work. Some of the work got farmed out to different suppliers or different individuals who did specialty things. But mostly Eric's time is in this vehicle. And a little bit of mine. I had a little bit to do with it, but I can't claim too much.
Well, you know, a lot of the cars that people will visit here today at the annual Antique and Classic Car Show were done by individuals in their own homes and garage with the help of family and friends. But this is such a special car that it had to be done right. It had to be done right.
Well, that's right. That's why we started into the project. When I got the car, we thought, oh, it's a nice old car. It's a Lozier. We'll paint it. Had a horrible paint job on it, so we thought we'd paint it and fix it up a little bit and drive it around town. But as we worked on it, and my part more in this project was doing the historical research on the vehicle and Lozier in general. And when we found out what it really was, it's instead of ending up being a daily driver around Plattsburgh, it's now become a museum piece. And we take it out and drive it around Cumberland Head, but you know, we are gentle with it. But it runs well. I mean, I can get in it and just fire it right up and start it and take off in it. It just drives like a dream.
It's a wonderful vehicle and will be the focal point of a great new museum if you have your way. And I think you're having your way.
Well, I think so, because I got a nice handshake with Mayor Stewart the other night at dinner. He's agreed that, we've been working through this, and it's taken time to get the ideas down and develop the concept of it and decide what's the best and what's going to make it work. And here comes Eric Edwards, actually. He finally showed up.
I bet he didn't drive that all the way either.
Well, he's actually been on a tour this week, and he can tell you about it. He's driven about 250 miles in that car.
Come on.
Oh, yeah. Talk to him. Have him come over and talk to him. He was down in Massachusetts, and he's on his way home back to Toronto, so he stopped in. But it's a beautiful little Model T Ford. I think it's a national champion. And as you can see, it's a neat car.
Isn't that beautiful?
But you were saying about the museum. So Mayor Stewart has actually been a very good friend and supporter of the project, and we've done a handshake on taking over 5 buildings out at the base, and it will be next to the Battle of Plattsburgh project, and we want to have a museum mall. And it's going to take years to develop this. I mean, I don't want the people here in town to think in the next 6 months there's going to be this big, huge, gorgeous museum. But this is an idea. It's just taking time. We're doing it with volunteers, and of course, obviously, funding is always an issue. But it's coming along the way it's supposed to be. And as time develops, we will develop the museum. And the same way with Battle of Plattsburgh. You know, they'll be developing it. They're not going to open up overnight either. But eventually, we will have a museum mall, as Mayor Stewart would like to say, and it's his dream to do that, and it's going to work.
Yeah, you know, not just the Lozier, but many other things will draw people to Plattsburgh like a magnet. As I told our viewers a few minutes ago, my brother Jim was just up here from Pennsylvania. He knows a lot about old cars. He and I built old cars back in the 50s, and he had never heard of the Lozier. So this morning over breakfast...
He didn't know much about cars then.
That's what I told him. I said, you eat your shredded wheat and I'll give you a liberal education about the Lozier automobile. He was amazed. He was truly amazed that we had such a fabulous car here. And I continue to hear new stories about the Lozier every year.
Yeah, there are. It's an amazing history. It was a prominent vehicle. The best cars, some of the best cars built in the world. Unfortunately, the company didn't last long, but that's what happens when you buy build high-priced cars, and the Depression hit, and people couldn't afford the vehicles. But these are some of the most beautiful cars. The Lozier are some of the most beautiful cars in the world, and they're highly treasured. Some of them are still out on the road. There's about 22 of them out there, and some of them are still out on the road. Some of them are in museums. They're just real special cars, and they do have a unique place in automotive history at the beginning of the 1900s.
I think it's important, again, to reiterate something. Calvin took a picture of your poster here, but it says only known remaining example. So that makes it unique.
That's what I said. We bumped into something. We didn't realize what we had when we got it. This is a Type 82, the last model built. There was actually an 84 built before the 82. That was a 4-cylinder. This was a 6-cylinder car. This is a 6-cylinder car. But this was actually the last one, the last model built. And it is the only Type 82 out there. And we're pretty confident that that's a true statement. So I've got the last one, and it is the only one in North America and probably the world.
Just to refresh the memories of people who regularly watch this program, and to educate those people who are watching it for the first time and never heard of Lozier until we mentioned that word today. We had a Lozier plant right here in Plattsburgh, an actual complex that was located down near Georgia Pacific Mill, at the end of Boynton Avenue and North Margaret Street. One of the large buildings is still there. Let's move over this way. And,
as we're talking, I thought he was going to look inside the box.
Oh yeah? What's inside? Is there a treasure in the box?
Well, it's a little addition that we put on the vehicle. You know, you're supposed to take your lovely wife and family out in a vehicle like this and go on a picnic and spend an afternoon, a beautiful day like today. And so typically what you'd have on the back here is a wicker basket with your plates, your food, you know, your drinks and all that. But this car is so high prestige that a wicker basket with a picnic bag would never work. No, so we had to take it one step forward.
Lunch!
Well, this is the lunch, yes.
So, who made this box for you?
This is, like I said, some of the work was farmed out by Eric. He knew somebody who does cabinetry work. You can see the inlay.
Absolutely.
And this was custom built for the car.
Isn't that special?
Well, we had to have one special thing that was a an option on the car, you know. So
Never mind turn signals.
never mind brake lights or turn signals. We had a little bit more. So
What our viewers know what it. Some of our viewers know what this car looked like when you first bought it, but it you had a lot of the parts were original, but you had to find other stuff, didn't you?
not very much. Be surprised. There's a couple of switches on the vehicle that are from a company that does stainless steel or nickel-plated switches for Rolls-Royce, old Rolls-Royce cars. So we have some of those on. Other than that, believe it or not, this car is basically all original. Other than the paint job, the new leather, and the top.
And the new top.
I mean, but mechanically, this is all a real Lozier. That was why when we found the car, we didn't realize how real it was. I mean, it was a real live original vehicle. It's not a parts car. I mean, we are working on another car, another Lozier, and admittedly, that's going to be a parts car. All Lozier parts, but it's all being pieced together from things we've collected. But when we bought this car, it ran. The fellow was driving it out in Washington, the state of Washington. He had it in parades, local little 4th of July parades. And we got the car, started it up, drove it, and it runs beautifully. I mean, it just...
Did you find it in a publication, or how did you locate this guy with this car?
Well, Eric found the fella, and I think the fellow was interested in selling the car. And he had talked to Eric because Eric deals in buying and selling of vehicles, and he found out about it, and that's how we sort of stumbled across it. But it was, prior to him, it had been sitting in a garage for 40 years outside the Detroit, Michigan area, or city of Detroit. So it was in storage for 4 decades, and that's one reason why it's so real, it's so original. It had been well-kept storage, too. It wasn't just in an old barn somewhere. And that's why when we got it, it was in such good condition, other than a very lousy paint job.
So this parts of this car might have been made in Plattsburgh, or were definitely made here.
We feel that it was. Back then, they had opened up their Detroit plant, and Plattsburgh went from being a manufacturer to a parts supplier for Lozier. And when this car was built, they were still in operation here in Plattsburgh. And it's very conceivable that the parts here on this vehicle were produced here in Plattsburgh. It's a little hard for us to prove that or know that for sure, but the factory was operational when this car was built. Certainly,
the name Lozier is synonymous with that time period in Plattsburgh, and as we find out, as I told you, I learn new stories every year. We hear from people whose grandfathers test drove the Lozier or worked in the Lozier plant. And you've acquired quite a bit of memorabilia since you first became interested in Lozier, haven't you? Old letters,
we've
newspaper articles.
Well, one of the nicest things we found, we do, you're right. We have pictures, letters, postcards that show the company, stories, articles. Some of them we have here on display today. Just an example, some of the pictures you see over there in the frames, just in the last 6 months. A lady called me up from New York City, and she said, "I've heard about you. I saw some stories on the internet, and I wanted you to know I have 4 glass slides of the plant." And that's what you're looking at over there.
Oh, I haven't seen them yet.
So we took the glass slides, and I gave them to Neil over Blair and Weber, and he had them printed. And we've got Skip up at Tip Top framing to frame them for me. And that's what you're looking at there. They're original pictures from inside the plant. So we're always turning up things, and that's the exciting thing. But I was saying there was an interesting thing about this, what we found, was when Eric went and took the leather off this car, when he was taking it apart and we were doing the leather, he found an envelope underneath the leather.
I remember that. Tell me about it.
And what it was a 1926 owner's registration from a fellow who owned the car downstate New York.
Oh, in New York.
It was New York. It was downstate, and we have the owner's this registration card. It's original, and I guess for some reason, I don't know why, he would have put it under the leather. The leather had torn, and he had it re-sewed or something like that. So he created a time capsule, and we found it. And of course, he's long gone, no doubt, and no way to go thank him, but yeah, we found it. It was a pretty neat part of the story.
You know, considering this car is as old as it is, as we look around the car, we realize how brilliant these people who engineered this vehicle must have been, because so many of the concepts, which were fairly new when this car was made, are still with us today in 2003's automobiles.
Yeah,
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, the basics of this car still exists in a lot of the modern cars.
Except we don't have an oil can under the hood anymore.
You like that?
I love it. I just noticed that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, you got to keep them well oiled. I have to run high weight motor oil in this car, and I had to run around. I couldn't find any, and I got some. I had to buy it by the, what did I get? Like a 10-gallon bucket of it. It's tractor trailer oil, 50 weight oil.
50. I was going to say
It has to be SAE 50, not 1050 or 2050. It has to be straight 50, non-detergent, non-synthetic. I went to all the local auto parts store, and they're just staring at me like, huh?
You've got to be
And then somebody said to me, check out the tractor trailer place. So I went across, I think it was down here on Military Turnpike, there's a place, and I walked in there, and they sell it by the big container, you know, for the trucks. I said, I'll take it.
I'll take one.
I've got it now.
So it's great. And you know, one of the wonderful things that I noticed before, and I've seen you start this car, is that it has an electric start on it, which was fairly unique.
It was one of the first one, about the first year that they had electric starters and electric headlights. Like my 1910 National sitting over there, I don't have them hooked up because of the safety issue. That has acetylene headlights. But they used to use acetylene tank just like on your barbecue, or the barbecues are propane, but acetylene like when you're doing a cutting torch or something. And there was an acetylene tank on that car with little tubes running up to the headlights, and you get a match out and light it. Well, of course, it's highly dangerous, and that's why we took them off. But this car, has the electric starter and electric lights, and it was right up there at the beginning when they first had them. It was right at the. It was one of the first vehicles to have it.
We have a guest. Eric, get over here.
Oh yeah.
How are you, buddy?
How are you today?
Great to see you again.
Nice to be back.
I saw you putting up here.
You did you?
I heard you.
I couldn't even sneak in.
I heard you put a couple 100 miles on that vehicle over the last little while.
We put about 400 miles on it this week.
400 miles.
We could have put more on, but the hills were pretty heavy.
Where'd you go?
We were in the northern part of Massachusetts, close to the New York state line. We toured the Berkshires. We went down to Stockbridge, went to the Norman Rockwell Museum.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was very
it?
nice. Delightful. What a lovely area. The people were delightful, and the roads were great. And 130 veteran motor cars, the Horseless Carriage Club of America. It was delightful.
Isn't that great?
It was our national tour. Yeah, had a great time.
This, as we've said 1,000 times before, even though it's Tony Vaccaro's dream, it's pretty much your baby. We know that.
We love working on all cars, but the Lozier has been the ultimate projects for us.
Well, let's get over this way. Yeah, we had to get the sun on the other side of it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, the Loziers have been delightful. We've enjoyed them because they're such high quality, and having the opportunity to work on that is any restorer's dream.
Well, we just talked with Tony about it, and there were so many unique features. You know, the embryonic things that we now take for granted on our automobiles were brand new engineering in 1915, and it's amazing to see them as they were and to imagine how truly advanced this vehicle was for its time.
And Lozier was smart because they looked at the best and then they copied too. Recently, we just brought home a Mercedes-Benz chassis for a client, and the story goes that Lozier sent their best people to Europe to learn at Benz, and when they came back, they were promoted to engineers.
I love it.
And if you were to look at the Benz and compare with the Lozier, the engines are almost identical in the early years.
Really?
They're almost identical. The story is that you could take a cylinder section from a Benz and interchange it with a Lozier and vice versa.
That's truly amazing.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part? Now, you spent how long?
On this car,
two and a half years?
No, we spent about a year and a half on this. And on this car, there was nothing hard about it. It was a piece of cake because it was so complete. Now, the other projects they're working on, they're very embryonic because we have not enough to build one car, but our vision is to build two. That means we have to clone an engine. We have to recast cylinder sections, crankcases. It gets very time consuming, very expensive, but it's also, you have to rely on those other people that have Loziers, and there's only a handful in the world.
In the whole world.
I mean, so they become our friends, they become our buddies. They have the same vision as we do. It's delightful.
You've been doing this, you told me, for a long, long time, this kind of thing, for how many years?
About 35 years.
Well, there's no end
And
in
I'm only
sight.
29.
Yeah, I know all about it. Yeah, me too. But it's such a passion, isn't it?
It really is a passion. Right now in our shop, we've got cars that are starting at 1903 and going up to about 1917. And working on cars of this vintage is what turns us on. And we won't work on anything newer.
I love it, and it certainly turns us on too to watch this from watch this project from the very beginning.
Well, that's
to
why
today.
we brought it in various stages as it came along.
Course.
Yeah.
And it makes the whole North Country. It brings them right into the circle, so to speak.
We're thrilled. We're really thrilled about it. We're glad that other people are just as enthusiastic about it as we are. We've given Tony and the town of Plattsburgh our complete support. 110% behind them.
We can't wait until this dream comes true and this museum is established.
Agreed.
Along with almost a campus of history out there in the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. It's a perfect venue. Of all the places in the world, there's so much history. There is one of the oldest, it was one of the oldest active military installations in the United States. And now to have this become a part of it and to have an interpretive center that celebrates the entire history of the North Country.
It's delightful.
What could we ever ask for?
It's perfect. It's just perfect.
Well,
it
Eric,
takes time to put this stuff together,
sure.
and I know it's happening. The focus has been, it has not lost any momentum. In fact, it's gaining momentum, and we're just waiting for it to happen. I said to Tony that we could supply cars for the museum. We could do anything that he would like. You know, we're behind you 100%.
It's going to be special. This area has always had a special connection with antique automobiles, and there's always been a nucleus of people who have restored old cars and so on. But never, until this car came to town, had I ever seen a complete Lozier in my life. So this was nirvana for me too.
Yeah, definitely. It makes us warm inside too. It's get that warm and fuzzy feeling, and that's great. You couldn't have any better.
I want to thank you, Eric, for not only being here today, but for your contribution.
Don't mention it. It's
just
so
fantastic.
good to be involved in it.
Enjoy your stay here today.
Thank you very much.
In 1967, I bought a brand new Pontiac GTO, and the total price with everything on it loaded was like $3,200. So imagine what $3,250 was like in 1915. What a beautiful story. But let's move on to these glass plates. You know, there are literally thousands of glass plate photographs that were taken in and around the city of Plattsburgh in this area and all the way up through the 1930s. Mm-hmm. It'll take a long, long time to get them all printed and cataloged.
Yeah.
But what treasures you have right here.
Yeah, these are the 4 that I got from the lady in New York City. Pictures of the original office and the original plant.
The office right next to the plant,
yes,
so you can see the proximity.
And then inside the factory. I love these old pictures because I first thought maybe there was a defect. I saw this in the negative, but because of the shutter speeds being so long in those times.
Hold on a minute. What? All right, this will be better without the glare on it. That's the original office.
This is the original office, and this is the picture. This is the original office again, but then there's the plant next door.
That building is familiar to people who drive by at the end of Boynton Avenue and North Margaret Street all the time. Parts of that building still exist.
And the train tracks run across the front here.
I know, I love it. And this is all a part of the diorama of the complex that Ron Venn built for us.
This is inside the factory. I love the way they used to run the old tools. They used to have a drive belt going across the ceiling with belts coming down to run all the machines. They had one source of power.
It worked.
And in this picture is a beautiful picture, once again, of the inside of the factory. You can see the details, and you can see the parts that have been stacked up, that have been produced. And when I first saw this, I thought there was a defect in the negative. I saw something, and then I realized, and I talked to Neil over at Blair and Weber, that what you're seeing there in the middle, because of the shutter speeds that they used to use in those pictures, it's just the light from coming through. And light coming through there. So there's really nothing wrong with the picture. It's just the best they could do back then with the sunlight in the background.
What beautiful spots inside. Don't you wish you could find about 10 of these and 15 of those?
If I could, and I'd probably be a very... I'd have some wealth.
I think some people may have seen these photographs before. Let's stand them up and...
This is a picture of Mrs. Lozier. Now this picture, actually, you said about the glass slides in the North Country. This is a glass slide that the Historic Society owns of Mrs. and likewise they found one of Mr.
1910. That's about the right era too.
Yeah.
1910. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So that is the man and his lovely wife.
And as time goes on, you just pick up more things, and this will be all part of the museum when it gets finished.
Yeah. Yeah, we have already a picture gallery area picked out, and we'll put it all on display.
Let's talk about the red car behind us. Let's walk over while Calvin takes a picture of it.
Okay. This is a favorite car of mine. This is a car that I really love to drive. The Lozier has become such a museum piece that just drive it a little bit once in a while, but this will go out. This is a real live 1910 national race car. Back then they used to build cars, and to race them they'd take the headlights off and maybe the fenders off, and they would, that's my driving helmet for the car.
I love it. Snoopy, a real
Snoopy. A lot of protection.
Yeah.
But this is a car that we took to Ormond Beach in March and drove it down there in the beach races this year. It has close to 500 cubic inch. It's a 4-cylinder engine. It's got 12 spark plugs, so there's 3 spark plugs per cylinder. It's a real race engine. And this car, the twin to this car, won the 1912 second annual Indianapolis 500.
At almost 80 miles an hour.
At almost 80 mile an hour.
Think about it, folks.
I've driven this car at 55 mile an hour.
Have you really?
And
you're a brave soul.
It's like being in an open cockpit airplane.
I imagine it is.
It's pretty wild, and it's a very physical car. It's not something you give to your wife and let her drive to the supermarket in or play with. It takes a lot of muscle to turn the steering wheel, a lot of muscle to work the pedals, and it's pretty brute force.
I can't believe you would drive this at 55 miles an hour.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Goodness.
We were racing at Ormond Beach. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ormond Beach story, though. They reenacted the 100th anniversary this year, and that's what the event was about. And we had about 30 cars down there, and the dragster, Don Garlitz, rode in this car with us.
Come on, did he?
Oh, yes. Oh, he walked up. Don Garlitz was there with a 1915 car that he owned. He was invited. There was a special invitation for these cars to come down. And he came over and loved the car, and he said, "This is really a nice car." And Eric was there, and he said, "You want to go for a ride?" And he said, "Could I?" So
isn't that beautiful?
So we put Don Garlitz in, and Eric drove the car, and he went down the beach. And apparently the story is he looked at Don Garlitz and said, "So is this the same as doing 250 mile an hour?" And he said, "No, better."
Isn't that wonderful?
So,
and he would know, Don Garlitz would know what 250 miles an hour feels like. That's wonderful. Well, we're going to walk around and take a look at Eric's car over here too, because that's a very special. Everybody loves red cars. You notice that? Kids love red fire engines. Now I noticed something in the last few weeks that I'd never thought of before. Young members of our fire department in Morrisonville and other fire departments, instead of buying old cars, are buying old fire engines for toys.
Yeah.
I see them driving around in old fire engines.
Well, you know what the story is, Gordy. I mean, we all us boys had fire trucks for toys, for models when we were little boys, and when you get older, your toys just get bigger. So you just have to buy another.
This kid backed into the fire station. I said, "Why did the fire department buy this old fire truck?" "No, that's mine."
Yeah.
He said, "You want to know how much I paid for it?" I said, "Yeah, I really would like to." And he said, "Well, I went on the internet and I searched around for a while. And he said, "What do you think it cost?" I said, "I don't know, $20,000." No, he said $4,500.
Oh, yes.
Fully equipped, wooden ladders, turrets, pumps, hoses, all ready to fight a fire. $4,500.
I'll tell you, my neighbors aren't happy about this, but I bought one for $3. It's out of my garage. They keep asking me to move it.
Did you really? What is it?
I got an old fire truck. It's an old Maxium it's called, M-A-X-I, or Maxi maybe, 1976 fire truck. And I always wanted a fire truck.
I love it. See, I started something. Oh, this is great. This is so much fun to drive because, you know, all the old Barney Oldfield photographs and stories we read, and realizing that the commercial automobile has been around 100 years already is just phenomenal to me.
Yeah. This is Ford is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year, and in fact, Eric's got his Ford here. It's a beautiful old Model T, and maybe he can come over and talk to us about it.
Yes, we will. Sneak over here one more minute. Guess who got the cold one?
Yeah, that's right.
100 years ago, Henry Ford did it for us, and we've celebrated that ever since. But boy, when the century rolls around, then it makes it kind of special.
Yeah.
So this is the car you told me you put 400 miles on.
Yeah, this is just a car that just came in from California that has been in storage for about 30 years. It's a 1911 Ford Torpedo, open runabout. This was one of 2 models that Ford was making that year with the Torpedo designation. Had the short running boards, the long fenders, steering columns very low, seat sits back a little bit further, the hood's a little bit longer. Now the radiator on this car is not Ford. This is an aftermarket radiator.
Oh, it is.
But it's something that we put on it a week before we went on tour. It was an accessory that was available at the time to go on race cars and on Model Ts. And this is German silver, nickel silver they called it, and it's just a sportier radiator. It's got more cooling capacity. It's probably another 4 quarts more.
Almost aerodynamic.
Yeah, it's a little bit aerodynamic, and it just gives a little bit of different feel to the car.
Now this gives you an example of what acetylene headlights look like.
Exactly. Now these lights, when they throw the beam of light, they're very bright. A lot of people are not using acetylene anymore, and they're putting halogen bulbs in. They're just as bright as halogen bulbs.
Were they really?
Yeah, they were. No. But the thing is, people are not familiar with the safe operation of acetylene. What you have to do is you put water in the top tank.
Yep.
You put acetylene or calcium carbide rock in the bottom. You regulate the flow of your water by this valve here. And there's a safety valve here to let off any excess gas. It gets piped through to the front. You open up your door, and then you light it with either a striker or a match. And then when you go to shut it off, you turn it off at the tank and let it just burn down. Now the side lights are kerosene.
Kerosene side lights, yep.
So when you were parked on the side of the road, you would light these so that nobody would run you over while you were either entering or exiting the car.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Could you cook an egg on your light?
You
probably could. Oh, it's hot stuff.
Oh, God,
definitely. Yeah. Now, on this car, it's got a special set of wire wheels. This is like an option. It would have been available at the dealer only, not right from the factory. And these are called Ford Deluxe wheels. I've never seen another set of them. And,
what would the other wheels look like?
It would have been a wooden wheel,
wooden spokes like these,
like on this car, but only a lot smaller.
A lot finer and smaller. Yep.
To match the car. But the wire wheel was a trouble-free wheel. It didn't creak. It didn't dry out. And this is what all the race cars were using in the early years. It's unusual that National and Lozier in the 1910, 1911, 12, they were still using wooden wheels when a lot of other people were using wire wheels. And I don't know, there must have been some theory that the torque could have been handled with the wood wheels.
You think so?
Possible.
I would never have thought of it that way, but you're probably absolutely right.
For high speed, These are the best because you could tune the wheel
course you
to
could.
run straight as a die. On a wooden wheel, you really couldn't do that. You either had a good wheel or you didn't.
And you know, spoke wheels. This is very similar to the wheels you see on your bicycle, and
That's
you can
right.
tune you can tighten each spoke individually.
That's right. Now, when they ran cars in the Indy, up until the 30s, 40s, they were using wire wheels that you could actually adjust, and they were the strongest wheel.
Look at the horn here, folks. Just take a look at this horn.
This is your typical bulb horn.
Oh yeah.
And if you were doing 60 mile an hour with a big car, you'd never hear that. So they would retrofit whistles and all sorts of sounding devices on their cars. But for low speed, that was fine.
And if you think the rear view mirror is the side mirror is a new invention,
It's so important.
Look at this. Isn't
So
that
important.
beautiful?
When we fold the windshield down, it makes the mirrors hard to use.
I would say so.
So what we like to try and run with the windshield up, and it does make a big difference. Keeping the bugs out of your teeth is so important.
That's true. Absolutely true.
Wearing glasses is almost a necessity as well. And they did back then. They wore goggles and kept the debris out of their eyes.
Was this car originally red, Eric?
This car did come in red.
It did.
It came in red, and it also came in midnight blue.
Oh.
Predominantly, this car, the bulk of the production, and it wasn't a lot of production for this particular model. I think in 1911 they maybe made 60 or 70,000 cars. Out of that production, there may have been 1,000 or less torpedoes. So it wasn't a big chunk of the production, but it sold very well. And by 1912, they changed the name and they made the car a lot squattier. The seat was a little bit higher. They put the gas tank under the seat. Here it's on the back.
Behind.
It's very sporty, like the National.
And to think that 100 years ago this year was the beginning of flight as well at Kitty Hawk.
Exactly. This year it's so important for a lot of different reasons. Buick's having their 100th anniversary this year. Last year it was Oldsmobile. This year we celebrated 100 years of speed on the beach at Ormond, as you well know.
Sure.
That was a delightful event. Very historical because 100 years ago it was special then. Today, for us to understand about that is even more special. If we understand the past, we can certainly understand the future.
And we got a trunk.
Yeah,
We have a real trunk.
It's a trunk. This is where I keep all my junk, all
Oh,
my
look
cleanup
at this.
stuff. I
And the battery.
Cheating. Got a battery in there.
That's all right.
But this is an option from the factory. They could have offered this as an optional piece of equipment. If you bought it from the factory or from the dealer, it would have been a bare panel on the back, and then they sold you the trunk to go on. Or you could put a wicker basket on, or you could even put your spares on the back. No, it was up to you.
I love it. So
Yep.
did you restore this from the beginning?
No, this car was restored 40 years ago by Sheldon Greenland in California. And we acquired the car from the Rollins collection in Santa Ana, California. And Rick's a friend of ours who has a wonderful European car collection. This was very dear to his heart, and he wanted it to go to the right home. And when we called about the car, he was thrilled that we would put it in our collection. And we're thrilled to have it. Performs great.
That's great. We love it. Eric, thanks again.
Thanks very much.
Get back to your cold one.
Okay.
Yeah, Eric is now backing this beautiful Ford out from under the tent, and Calvin's going to go for a ride with him. I mean, it's a nice seat, but it's not wide enough for my backside and the other two much thinner ones. So Calvin's going to go for a ride and give you a bird's eye view of what it feels like to go aboard this great old Ford. Here we go.
All right, Eric, we're rolling.
We're in low gear right now. It's pedal operated. It's a semi-automatic planetary transmission. Instead of operating it by hydraulics, we operate it by foot. So right now we're in low gear, and as I take my foot off, we're rolling into neutral. Brakes are good, so hang on.
I'm a hanging.
You just engage low gear, operate these hand controls just like on a tractor, and we can just put around here. We do have some acceleration.
How fast would the vehicle like this?
Top speed's about 45 mile an hour. We like to run it at about 30, 25 to 30. It's very comfortable at that speed and manageable. It's easy to steer. It's got a very, how can I say, it's like a friendly puppy. You know, it's easy to manage. It's not hard to handle. It's just a friendly car. And that's why the car did so well. You know, this is the car that put the world on wheels. Henry Ford made it simple for everybody to be able to operate. And it steers very simple. You can fix it very easily. It wasn't complicated. And it gave good service. And this is why they sold millions and millions and millions.
Now, in 1911, was his assembly line working? Was it?
No, not yet. This was still a hand-built car. It wasn't until 1913 that the assembly line started, and by 1914 they were in full tilt. This was still a hand-built car. They would bring the parts to the car and assemble them, and that was very time-consuming. It also needed a lot more space. By the time that the assembly line rolled around, they were building over 100,000 cars a year, and that's a lot of cars to build.
On a piece-by-piece basis.
On a piece-by-piece.
They could do that.
Yeah. Well, in 1911, I believe they made probably 60,000 cars. In 1912, I believe they doubled their production. Every year seemed to be a doubling of production from about the beginning. So you can probably hear the coils buzzing away. One per cylinder. Much like today, our new cars have one coil per cylinder. And, it gives a smoother operation, and it doesn't take away from the voltage that's needed to ignite those spark plugs or whatever means they're going to be using to ignite. But these cars were the first cars that were turned into hot rods. Consequently, the radiator you see on the front, that's one of the holdovers from the hot rod days. They made everything for this car for high performance. They made high performance cylinder heads, wheels, axles, crankshafts, camshafts, carburetors. Everybody that made parts became wealthy. And in the early years, in the 20s, every county fair would have races with Model Ts and Jitneys, and they put on a performance. And they even played polo with Model Ts. So it's this was a car that put America on wheels, so put the world on wheels.
This is considered a Model T then?
This is a Model T. This would be the third year that they produced the Model T. They started in 1909. Actually, in October of 1908 was their introductory model. And by the time 1911 came out, they had done all the major improvements on the car that were held through basically until 1927. And then in 1928, they introduced the new Model A Ford, what they called the new improved Ford. So there was a lot of thought that went into these cars. They used the best material that money could buy. They gave the best service at a very reasonable price. They were not a cheap car. They were inexpensive. To make a car today out of the material that Ford made these cars out of would be very expensive. They used only the highest grade steel. Nickel vanadium, chrome vanadium steel in their frames and axles. Their castings for their engines were wonderful. There was nothing that was bad about them. It's just that their long run made them obsolete by the time 1927 came out. 1927, Chevrolet was taking a big chunk of the market, and Ford had to do something dramatic in order to keep up. So for 4 years they had the Model A Ford, and they almost lost their shirt during that period. In 1932 they introduced a Ford V8, the 32 Ford V8, and everybody else was still playing around with six-cylinder cars, so it skyrocketed Ford ahead again. So it's an interesting history that Ford has had. Now this year They just celebrated their 100th, and there was big celebrations in Dearborn a couple of weeks ago. Hundreds of cars, thousands of cars from all over the country converged on world headquarters. It was a big party, and rightfully so. It was a special event.
It certainly is.
I had a friend of mine drive his Model T from California to Dearborn, and he had no problem. Just given enough time.
Yeah, I think many of us, people who don't know history of cars the way you would, probably assume that Henry Ford went into that mass production right away, but that's certainly not the case, what you've just told us.
In fact, Henry Leyland was one of the first to standardize machining operations so that he could take parts and interchange them with any other engine. In fact, in 1906, they won the Dewar Award for automotive excellence, the Society of Automotive Engineers. Am I okay there?
Oh, yeah, it's cold.
It's all right.
If he rips us broken.
She's a backseat driver, even if she's not in the backseat?
I'll tell you, we had an incident once. We were in two separate vehicles, and we had CB radios, and she was directing from another vehicle. That's
Remote
a first.
control.
Remote control. There you go.
They shut the CB off on me.
Well, thank you very much for a very nice ride. It's
You're
probably
quite
one of the
welcome.
nicest rides I've had in months.
Well, you know, it's a different kind of drive, and that's why we like to take our cars on tours, because it propels us back in time 100 years.
Well, we got enough looks from people just driving around at a car show. I imagine when you drive this down the highway, you really get attention.
Sure you do. It's and you get a lot of people that come up and talk to you about the car, and it's very nice because it brings back memories to a lot of people. It's just a nice way of going through, taking a drive slowly through the world. You know, you get to see other things at a different speed.
Without having to pedal.
Without having to pedal. That's right. Yeah.
Thanks.
A lot of people are coming to the Antique and Classic Car Show at the Clinton County Fairgrounds this year to look over the Lozier automobile because we've talked so much about it. And I just heard a guy mentioning to his wife as they walked by you, hey, that's Ron Venn. That's that guy that makes the model. That's the guy that takes the pictures that we see on television all the time. And we talked about you earlier and about this great diorama you made of the Lozier Works. But some of our viewers may not have seen that before. That's still pretty neat, isn't it? It was fun to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun to build. Took about a month and a half to construct. So, but it was a lot of fun building it.
And that's the way it looked when?
1913.
Did it? That's the way it looked.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
Just to let people know, where's Boynton Avenue? Point to it.
Boynton Avenue is right here. Here's Cumberland Avenue, and this is Margaret Street. Here's the boathouse that you see. It's painted yellow.
Oh, that's the one you see, huh?
Yeah, this is the one you see, but back then it was painted gray.
So as you're coming into town, right, down Boynton Avenue,
On Boynton.
you come to the intersection with Margaret Street.
Yes.
The roads are just about in the same direction that they were
same direction.
then. And you see the boathouse sitting there, and some of the old photographs you see buildings extended on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So did you use a photograph to do this, or what?
Well, I used a photograph I got from Dr. Ficcaro's book because the Lozier Big Sixes, and it showed both buildings from Detroit and Plattsburgh. So I copied the Plattsburgh one, but I blew up the size I wanted to build the buildings. So then I just blueprinted it from there, or scaling it down to size.
So what else are you building these days?
Nothing right now. I'm building 2 display cases for my neighbor.
Are you really?
Yeah, he collects like fishing reels and like that, so we decided to build 2 cases for him. Then my cousin from Saranac got a dresser he had in his house for quite a while. He never put it together, so he brought it down, so he had me put it together. It took me 3 evenings to do that.
A dresser?
Yes, a dresser he bought as a kit, but he didn't have enough time to finish it, so he brought it down to me because he knows I like to build stuff out of wood. So.
Have you taken any more photographs lately?
A couple, not too many.
Ron is on the committee for the Lozier Museum, and you're the official photographer, so you probably take a few shots today, huh?
Yeah, I took some of the car when he brought it here, when he was unloading it.
It's nice to have pictures of it from the beginning right up to the present time, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess when he had it a couple years ago when it was partly together. So later on when I get together, I'll put it in a photo album, like during construction and when the car is done.
That's great. How's your mom doing?
Okay.
That's great. Well, one of these days we're going to have to come to Ron Bent's house at 72 Bailey Avenue to do chapter 14.
Yeah, I think so.
Ron, have a great day.
Okay.
See you later, my friend.
All right.
It's hard to believe that this vehicle was pre-World War II. Just look at the massive chrome, the special running lights and headlights. And as you may be able to see, this is a 1940 Cadillac Series 90, a 5-passenger coupe. But coupe is almost a misnomer because this is a huge automobile. Speaking of huge, take a look at that engine. You may not have seen a car with 16 cylinders before. I've seen 8s and 12s, and now the Cadillac LaSalle company with a special V16 engine, which was pretty fantastic. The end of one era and the beginning of another. And this was the last year, 1940, that the V16 was powered by that huge, or powered that big engine powered this car. So it says of 61 Fleetwoods built in 1940, Cadillac built only one model, 9057B. This is the 5-passenger coupe that you see here today. It's absolutely beautifully restored with a big, thick white wall tires. And for those of you who are engine aficionados, it's 431 cubic inches. And this vehicle weighs roughly the same as that Lozier that we looked at before. This vehicle weighs 5,190 pounds. It developed 185 horsepower. 3-speed power drive to the wheels. Take a look at it. Beautiful car for 1940 when you consider that's 63 years ago. We were just talking with Ducky and Dick Matat, and we stood across the road from this beautiful Thriftmaster Chevrolet truck of theirs, and of course we had to mention Calvin's friend and soon to be mine, Ozzie Sweet, whom Calvin and Judy went to interview in Maine. As the crow flies, about 2 weeks ago. We're recording this toward the end of June. So it was early June, was it?
June 6th.
June 6th. And we learned that Ozzie will be coming to the North Country in a short time, and we hope to continue our series of interviews with him. What a wonderful world-class photographer. But look what we found out. And Calvin, you got a copy of this calendar, don't you?
Yeah, Ozzie had given me a whole bunch of stuff to take back, and including some 2004 calendars. And when I got back, I started going through them, and first thing I come across is my old buddy Dick Matat's truck, which I'm very familiar with. And of course, Dick, because he was related to a cousin of mine, I've known Dick since I was probably 8 and he was 28. You know, he's a lot older than I am. He's probably about 3 years older than I am. So I've known Dick pretty much close to all my life. So when I saw that truck, I was kind of excited about it. And they were just telling us how they hooked up with Ozzie down in Manchester, Vermont, at a car show.
It's amazing. Ozzie liked the truck and knew it would look good on a calendar, and guess where it shows up? On the very first page. And I think it's sheer providence that this truck was actually the first owner of this truck was right near where Ozzie grew up, right?
Ozzie grew up in New Russia and went to the one-room school in New Russia, then went on to high school in Elizabethtown. And this truck here, from what Dickie and Ducky just told us, was from Elizabethtown.
Isn't that great? I told you there are no coincidences. We pilfered this from the inside the vehicle, so we'll have to put it back there, see if we can keep it from tipping over. This is an award-winning truck, but it's only one of so many great vehicles that are here on the fairgrounds, Clinton County Fairgrounds, for the Antique Classic car show and so many other things connected with it for 2003. This was mighty fine in 1959, and it's pretty fantastic in 2003, the Ford Skyline, the Ford Galaxy hardtop convertible. And I'm sure some of our younger members have never seen or dreamed of anything that was this cool, but I can remember the first one that I ever saw, and I was amazed. You didn't want to try to do this when you're doing 75 or 80 down the highway, but when you were stopped, it was a pretty neat thing to do. Of course, you needed a lot of space in the back because this entire hardtop has to fold down in there, and the lid on the back has to fold down on top of that. But what a classic idea, and what a beautiful vehicle. I don't know how much restoration had to be done, but once again, it's a mighty super looking red car.
It's only about 50 feet long, too.
It's just tremendously long, and you can see the hydraulics involved in getting this thing down and getting it back up again. I wonder how well it works these days. But it's a beautiful vehicle, and it's part of the car show here on the Clinton County Fairgrounds.
Now, we should point out, Gordy, this is the 5th annual. Last couple years, I think they started off here. In the last couple years, it's been at Park, at the Oval, Old Base Oval. Now they're back here, but this is something that's just about every year around this time, the end of June. So if people are interested in old cars, they ought to mark their calendar.
Something else dawned on me as I wore my Camp Kettle t-shirt last night out to dinner. You and I should be going up to that pig roast sometime in August, shouldn't we? I mean, that's one of the most popular shows we ever did. That was so much fun. Somebody in the restaurant said, "Camp what?" I said, "Camp Kettle." As their eyes got about 2 inches from my chest, and they said, "Pig roast." I said, "Oh, yeah." It's always fun to walk around the Clinton County Fairgrounds. There aren't very many of us who don't have fond memories of the small fairs around the North Country and the county fairs, and through the eyes of Calvin's hometown cable television show, we've been to a few of them at different places. And for those of us who are over 50 years old, a lot of these vehicles that are parked here today are familiar, including the famous, or if you choose, infamous Edsel, which is right over here to the right-hand side. And I'm not...
One of a kind front-end grill.
Yeah, it certainly is. As it winks at you with that one eye in the middle. And the car was so far ahead of its time that it turned out to be a joke in the Ford company.
I think it was only a couple of years. Originally, I thought it was only 1 year. I think it was made 2 years, 58 and 59, I think.
But here it is. I remember one at old Charlie Gwinnup's junkyard when I first met Charlie back in the early 60s, and it was still there. When Charlie died a few years later, I don't know where it might have ended up. I'm sure this is not the one, but listen to this. The posters for the Edsel and the magazine article said, "Edsel makes history by making sense." In retrospect, we're not positive that would be true, but it was a pretty neat, and still is a pretty neat automobile. And there were a lot of them in junkyards all over the North Country, and not too many have been restored, but this is a really nice one.
Again, look how long this car is.
Oh yeah, tremendously long. Big wide back seat, tremendous long trunk. You could put lots of suitcases in compared with some of the trunks of today. But most of these cars that you see here today at the fairgrounds are running and on the road. And I should say that they're giving lots of trophies, and I think 30 categories or something. So I've judged a couple of car shows in my day, and believe me, I swore the last time, which was right at this location, I would never do another, because I had people chasing me down the highway when I left. And it's very hard to be objective when you're looking at cars, because you have your favorites, and these people are very proud of all of their cars that they bring here today. They're not only from New York State, but from Vermont, other New England states, and Canada. I don't know how the farthest one would be, but my brother and I were just talking about the old orange license plates that we haven't seen in quite a few years. But that's what they look like. And I think I have a few hanging on the walls of my garage. That's a very sweet car. And that's the Lancer. Okay. familiar car, but I've never owned one. Kind of neat body style, huh?
It's got to be a Studebaker.
Oh yeah. Really neat. I've seen a few other Studebakers here along the line. Many different colors. Most are original. This is an Oldsmobile, but I don't know what year. Pontiac. Is it a Pontiac? All right, 1958. Bonneville.
Let me tell you, there weren't too many ugly cars made in 57, 58.
No, weren't they neat? Weren't they so far ahead of their time, and just such classic designs by today's standards? And you really appreciate it when you see one that's restored to absolutely the way it was when they were brand spanking new. You gotta love it. And of course, a lot of Chevys, and we were partial to the Chevys during that time period. Talk about classic automobiles, even for you, young fella.
Oh yeah, yeah. My father almost bought a 57 Chevy.
Did he?
Ended up with a 56, I think. But,
Here's one that's really, truly beautiful. Look inside under the hood. Probably not the way it looked when it came from the factory,
No.
if you have to know the truth about it. But it's beautiful. And this one comes from Swanton, Vermont, as we can see. Absolutely beautiful vehicle.
Well, it's a beautiful day today, so a lot of people are here. You know, when it's overcast and rainy, the guys don't always like to bring their cars out.
Well, many of these shows are absolute classics. Look at the doll behind the wheel of this one. Does that remind you of a movie?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of classic automobiles, antique cars and classic automobiles today. Not just cars from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but cars that date back to the very early part of the 20th century. And it's a pleasure to see some ones that were fairly popular and some that are absolutely unique, like that Lozier and a few others. One of the most famous shows ever done on Hometown Cable by Calvin Castine and the late Bob Venn. In what year would that have been, Calvin?
1994.
1994 was at Meesick's Sawmill.
Yeah.
And that Mr. Meesick is not with us anymore, right?
No, yeah, he passed away
but his brother
5 years
is.
ago. Yeah.
And what's your first name?
Rudolph.
Rudolph. Yeah, we knew that.
Yeah.
Because you've been
My
around
name
here
is
for a
spelled
long time.
different than the rest. You know? Yeah.
Well, that was quite a sawmill, and that
Yeah.
was quite a show. People
Yeah.
still comment on that program wherever
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah.
We loved that show that Calvin did.
Yeah.
I wasn't working with Calvin until 1997, but when that show was done, people talked about it.
Yeah.
Your brother was a character, wonderful. The way he spoke, the way he talked about his sawmill was terrific.
Yeah.
Now, we came here today, you told me that you're restoring a truck that he had there at the sawmill, which people can see right on that old show.
Yeah. 37 Ford, 2-ton Ford with a 12-foot rack. The first one that came that Mr. White sold in Allenburg Depot was a demonstrator truck. It was supposed to have been sold as a demonstrator. Yeah. First 12-foot rack.
So you dragged it down to your garage.
Yeah, and I'm going to recondition it and make a new one out of it.
Are you? And
Yeah.
you haven't started on it yet?
Oh, yeah, I'm already started.
Oh,
I
you
got
did?
the windshield out and the door panel, the windows, the seats out. Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about this nice Chevy here.
Well, this one here, he took a picture of it, and the back part in behind the bumper, I replaced that. In behind the bumper, and the woman that owned the car, he owned the car, she took a picture of it when I was taking it apart. You ought to seen it when we started.
Really?
Yeah.
You spent a long
It was
time
a
on it?
basket case. Well, we spent one summer on it. You know, like,
Did you?
Yeah. The two of us worked on it. My brother Roger and me, and Roger paints it. He's my painter now.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot of fun to make the old cars look new again, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're good material to work with. They
Yeah.
ain't plastic anymore in them days.
That just happened to be a good year, 1957, huh?
Yeah, 37 up, they didn't use no recycled metal. They
No.
were all new metal. Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
What other vehicles are you working on? Any other ones right now, or not?
I just finished a Midnight Charger. There's 75 of them made. I just finished it. I bought it 20 years ago.
And you just got it done?
Just got it done.
Just be patient. We'll get it done.
I get it done, yeah. That's the way it goes. And I bought this one in '89 when I had my heart surgery before. This woman just drove that 3 years on the road.
Really?
Yeah, she got it December about that at Long Lake. And the paint was awful on it, but the interiors, the original interiors, 62 GT Lancer. They made 1,000, the first 225 they made with the aluminum block in there. They made 1,000 motor on the aluminum block 225,
really?
Yeah. The early one were only the 170 engine.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
So did you have to do a lot of work on the motor or not?
Well, I had the motor was sludged up. I cleaned it, you know. That's what I did with the motor, cleaned the sludge out of it.
It's been on the road again for 3 years, huh?
Yeah, no, we registered it, and we've been all over down in Vermont with it. I drove it to Stowe a couple of times. Yeah, Saturday, and drive it on Saturday and drive it back on a Sunday.
Is your shop still on Stelzer Avenue?
No, mine's on George Street. I'm down by that Placo plant.
Oh.
Yeah, in behind the house. I've been there 43 years. I started in 1960.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah.
I knew you were in town
I don't
somewhere.
advertise very much. I got plenty of work. A lot of people knows me out in 43 years and before that, you know. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on a great job done. We can't wait to see that truck.
Oh, yeah. Well,
we'll have to do the sawmill revisited with Rudolph and the 37.5 ton, huh?
2 ton they call those.
2 ton. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The 36 with a 1.5 ton with a 10-foot stake. And 37 they come out with a 2 ton with a 12-foot rack.
I love it.
Yeah, the first one, yeah.
Well, we'll keep track of you, Rudolph. Thanks,
yeah.
Thanks for talking with us today.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'll see you.
It's a 1905 perfect.
Back around 1905, there was a wonderful song called "Come Ride with Me, Lucille, in my merry Oldsmobile."
And this is the car that the
Down the road of life we'll fly, auto bubbling you and I.
Right.
To the church we'll swiftly steal, and the wedding bells will peal. Come ride with me, Lucille, in my merry Oldsmobile. Not that I know the song or anything.
What was the guy's name?
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Steele.
Oh,
because it rhymes with Oldsmobile.
You just happen to know all about that.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Bob Van Arsdale.
Bob, where are you from?
Barrie, Vermont.
Well, we're delighted to have you over here today with your 1905 Oldsmobile. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, anyway, about that song, that was the first automobile song.
Oh, it was?
That was the first automobile song. That's the thing that
before
started
all the Flivver and Ford
my
songs
GTO, yes.
Yeah. Oh, way before my GTO. We're just talking about my 67 GTO.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it was the first car song.
This is a one-cylinder engine. They started making these in 1901. And this is an 05. And Oldsmobile redesigned this car entirely twice. So there are actually 3 different versions of curved dash Oldsmobiles, and this is the last one, and it's got all the bells and whistles.
It's interesting to look at the original patents in 1896.
Yeah, they started working on prototype vehicles in '96, and they didn't start selling cars until 1901. It's a one-cylinder engine. It's about 1.5 liters, puts out 7 horsepower. It's chain drive.
Big, I don't know if you can see it down here, but it's a huge, larger than the average bicycle chain. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, you can still buy that chain. They still make that chain.
You've got to be
kidding.
kidding.
You can still buy it new.
So how did you come about it?
This car actually spent a lot of its time in the Saratoga, New York area. It belonged to someone down there back in the 60s and the 70s. And when that person died, it then went to Long Island, and from there to New Jersey, and then it went out to California. And I bought it from California.
You gotta be kidding.
I bought it sight unseen because I have a 1903 also. I'm restoring an 03.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, so I wanted this model because it has all the bells and whistles. So I saw this one in Hemmings Motor News and called the fellow up in California. He sent me pictures of the car. Verified it was what he said it was, and I bought it sight unseen and had it trailered out here by horseless carriage transporters.
For the benefit of those who are watching our program and who are not familiar with cars, Hemmings is the Bible.
Hemmings is the place to go if you're looking for an antique car. That's where they're all listed, yep.
So it almost made it home.
Almost made it home.
We ought to get it back down to Saratoga just once for some special event.
Yeah. Now, let me show you that. You see that carburetor there?
Yes, right
That's a
here.
Holley Model A carburetor.
that?
It's the first Holley carburetor.
And we're still buying Holley carburetors these days
Yeah.
for our hot rods, aren't we, huh?
Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, this car will do about 25 miles an hour comfortably, and if you push it, it'll do 30. And when you're doing 25 or 30 in this car, you think you're doing 90.
You got it,
The
baby.
reason is you're sitting way up on it, and you don't sit in it, you sit on it. So at that speed, you think you're really moving along.
Yeah, it's like sitting on a skateboard with
Yeah.
a motor on it and going down the road. How much restoration did you do on it?
I've done mostly mechanical work. What you see here is a restoration that was done probably in the 50s or the 60s.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it's an older restoration. This is my driver. I drive this car to work. I drive it
Come on.
hundreds of miles a year. I drive
Do
this
you
car to
really?
work. Yes.
And a lot of people turn their heads to say, what
Yeah.
the heck is that thing?
Yeah, we have a club for Curved Dash Olds owners, and there's about 400 members in the club. Most
isn't it great?
people have a car, and it's sort of like one of our club traditions is to give people rides. So whenever we have opportunities, we give little kids rides and stuff like that. That's why the wheels are all muddy, because 2 weeks ago I spent all day giving kids rides down in Shahari, New York area.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're talking about 100 years of Henry Ford and the Ford automobile. It's about time we give Oldsmobile a little equal time, huh?
Yeah.
'Cause they were competitors.
Yeah. These are great cars to drive. They're wonderful fun. And the other question I get is, where do you get parts? And the answer is, you make them.
You make them.
You make your own parts.
You make a lot of friends among those people who are machinists.
Or you become a machinist.
Have you had to replace a lot of things?
Not on this too much. I've done some mechanical work, and I've made some parts for it.
Have you really?
Yeah.
So
made
what-
all these brackets here for the license plate and the tail light and stuff. That stuff we made for it.
That's great. And you brought it over here on a trailer?
On a trailer. It's a little too far to drive. I mean, if I'd left yesterday, I'd still be on the road.
I love it. You only have one other old car, and that's your
03.
03?
Yeah.
How long have you been interested in Oldsmobiles?
Well, I bought the 03 in 97. I've had it almost 70 years now. And that I bought, the car hadn't run for 50 years. And,
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and it had to be completely rebuilt. So that car was my first Oldsmobile, actually. But I've had antique cars before. I've had a Model A Ford, and I've had a 34 Plymouth. And,
Oh, you did?
yeah, I've been doing antique cars for since the 60s.
You got the bug. Well, we're delighted to have you over here today, and thanks so much for bringing your 1905 Oldsmobile.
Thank you.
Have a great life, Bob. Most of our viewers and the newspaper readers of my column and my good friends know I've loved to camp for a long time, but I've never seen anything quite like this prototype motorhome that dates back to the 60s, and nobody even knows what year it was made. It just says 60s. And it was made by a company called Rectrans, R-E-C-T-R-A-N-S. I don't even know if I pronounced it correctly. It says late 60s, class 28. There's a gentleman from St. Albans, Vermont. I don't know what class it would be judged in, but it seems to me like it might win the blue ribbon, because if it's a prototype, it's one of the only ones of its kind ever made. It's 40-some years old now. Look at this with that's pretty cool. With a special umbrella on the tailgate. It's really pretty. Almost looks like the color of a school bus. That thing is high. Wow, I'm not sure you could get by under all the trees and bridges with it. Very, very interesting. I don't know if they have a class for motorhomes or not, or certainly for prototype motorhomes. Many of the things you see are exactly the same kinds of things today. Water filling tanks and so on. Giant tires. Looks like it's extremely heavy. Look at the size of this giant bumper.
Comes with a
Here we go. Isn't that beautiful? We like it.
Thank you very much.
That's really decent.
She's a prototype.
Yeah, who are you?
Pat Logging.
Pat. Gordy Little and Calvin Castine for Hometown Cable. We couldn't help but stop and look at this vehicle.
Thank you very much.
You don't even know what year it is.
No,
60s.
in the late 60s, I assume. The one that picture had on the bottom there, it's a 71. They built for 71 and 72, and the company went belly up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When I bought it, it has no name on it and has no VIN number.
Oh, it does it?
No. And
So it was a prototype, that's for sure.
yes, I found out who made it through with the serial number off the Onan generator. I had this enlightenment.
We've all had a few of those at one time or
Yeah,
another.
not too many. So I called, and the young lady gave me an 800 number out in Minnesota, and the young fellow looked it up. He told me Rectrans, but that's all. So he told me if that were today, I wouldn't be able to trace it, because they all sold by distributors, So anyway, I went to Heritage Foundation in Elkhart, Indiana, and it's an RV museum, and they told me who made it. Rectrans, a division of White Motors.
Oh, I'm very familiar with White Motors.
yeah.
I had an uncle that was an executive for White Motors way back in the 1950s. Yeah.
Yep, that's who built it. That was a division of that company. But they, some people say they sold out to Mack, and then there's other people that say they sold out to Volvo.
Well, there's got to be somewhere. If I had the time, I'd do some research for you, but there's somebody knows, and somebody has written about this somewhere, and you just haven't come across them yet.
Well, I'll keep trying.
Well, that's half the fun, right?
Oh, yes.
Well,
Oh,
let's
it's been
talk
a lot
about
of-
first of all, where you're from, Pat.
Georgia, Vermont.
We're glad to have you over here. We got a lot of Vermont people bringing vehicles over here today. How did you come across this thing? I mean,
And the Hemi's Motor News.
see that? There's probably half the cars here were purchased by people who found them in Hemmings.
Yep.
But where was it when you found it?
And I forget the name of the town, about 30 miles south of Lexington, Kentucky.
You didn't go down. You went to Kentucky to look at it?
Yes. Well, I heard enough from talking to the fellow on the phone that I was interested in it. I had thought at one time that I have other antiques, and I thought of something where I could build a ramp and drive him into it, and use that, but it wasn't to be. But when I get inside it, I realized what it was, because there's not a mark on anything in there. Nothing has ever been used. It's got the original shower curtain.
Come on.
It's got everything is in there. It's original. The only thing that happened to it is they got a little bit of fading in the. It sat in Miami for, I don't know, between 15 and 18 years, right in the summertime. And a young fella, I don't know, he's a graduate, but he's going for as a meteorologist, and he told me that down there in Miami, in the summer they could have heat as high as 120, 125. He said, so this thing here possibly built its heat up to maybe 200 degrees inside, but it didn't do any damage to it.
You don't. How much restoration did you have to do when you got it? Nothing.
I painted it. I never painted anything before in my life, and I decided to paint this, and that was not a very good idea.
You want to tell me about that, Pat?
Not one of my brainstorms. No, I had a garage to put it in. I have a garage for it, and it's a very.
It's a big garage.
It is. It's very long, but I only had about that much, maybe 2 feet on each side to work with a spray gun. But the better part was upstairs. I had to.
I can't even
do
imagine.
I had to crawl to my stomach with the spray gun behind me. It was funny. I don't know who had more.
I wish we
paint.
had a video of that, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I'd like that for publication.
But you didn't have to do much on the motor or anything, or?
No, they had rebuilt the motor.
Well, they had.
Yeah, and they had put a whole new brake system in it in order to get it from Florida up to Kentucky. They were in the RV business, an RV trailer park.
Yeah.
So they wanted to use this as an office because of this, and then there's a built-in desk in there. And they tried it out for about 2 months and it didn't work. And they put it up for sale. They thought it was 107,881 miles on it. And it's actually was only 7,800 miles on it.
7,800, as in 7,800 miles?
That's right. Right now it has 90, I think it's 9,400 miles.
Did you drive it up from Kentucky, or did you have somebody?
Oh, yes.
You
I
did?
drove it. Oh, sure, why not? It was an experience.
Why not? Was it?
Oh, yes. It was a real experience.
People looking at that baby going by saying, what the heck was that, Maud?
Oh, it drew flies when I would pull into into a rest area. I'd have truckers over and people, in RVs, and they wanted to know all about it, and I knew nothing, right? So, but it was, I was very impressed with the way it looked inside. So, I did more than, got my money's worth out of it. But I don't have, I couldn't take it and go camping with it. It's cost prohibitive. It's only getting 5 miles to the gallon,
Oh, about 5? That's almost as much as my Bronco used to get. 8 miles to the gallon in the old days.
No.
So what, you started bringing it around to shows once in a while?
Yes,
or?
yes. It got a nice award down at the Sheldon Museum.
Did it?
Yeah, got a first place award for the most unique and interesting vehicle they've had in 25 years.
I said to Calvin, it can't be, whatever category you're being judged in, there aren't too many other here like it.
No, I'm with all these other people here. I don't know how you end up in there, but that's the way they do it. Everybody does it differently.
I really like your vehicle. It is indeed unique. It's a pleasure to see it. I've been a camper for years and years, and I've never seen anything like this before.
Well, the interesting, it's all one piece.
Is it really?
Yes. The whole thing is all welded 1/8 inch aluminum sheets, and the only thing that's not is this deck, the door to get in, and the access in the front to the generator.
Looks like it's made like a tank.
It certainly is. That I can, weight 14,000 pounds.
When
That's
you're going 14,000 pounds, no wonder it's 5 miles per gallon. Yeah, a little guy stays on the front bumper and says, "Get out of the way! This thing is gonna."
We're dynamite going downhill, but then you have to go back up again, So, but it's enjoyable. It's I enjoy bringing it to the shows. I have a couple other antiques, but this one here, it's different. I'd like, as far as the trophies, that's nice, but I like the people to see it.
Yeah, talk about it and you share that information with other people. Yeah.
That's right. I never seen a prototype before in my life.
Don't, me either. I love it.
And all of a sudden I own one.
I love it. Pat, nice to meet you, buddy.
It's a pleasure. Thank
Good
you
luck.
very
Have
much.
a great day.
Same now.
Well, we're waiting for the open sesame. Maybe we get the door open, climb right up here. And I just want to take a look inside here. Yes, I can make it if you can, Calvin. Oh my gosh. Isn't this amazing? Look at this.
It's got a doorbell too.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's right there.
Got a doorbell that chimes, curtains that were meant to come across on the front for privacy. I mean, it has many of the features that today's motorhomes have. But as we said before, this is a prototype.
Yep.
If you were 6'6", you might have to bend over
a little bit of a problem,
coming
yes.
through here, but
Condition.
look at absolutely beautiful dash.
The chairs are all one piece. The seats, I should say,
Are
and
they
they're
really?
it's like a sculptured aluminum, and then upholstered over it.
Got little fans, one on either
Yep,
side,
keep it
and
cool.
the front to keep it.
8-track player.
8-track? Is that an 8-track player in
Yes,
there?
it is, and it works too.
Does it really?
Yes.
And you have
all
8
of-
tracks to put in there?
Oh,
I
yeah,
gave all mine away.
No, I have what's his name? Yeah, Glenn Miller and
Oh boy.
what was the other one? The Hip Parade.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. No, I didn't. They were here with it. They were with the machine.
And everything, you got everything working in here now, or?
Oh yes, everything works. Yep.
And you've never
So you
camped?
can see there's no marks in the sinks.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
No mark on the
considering-
counterpart, the table, nothing.
Well, no, I just want to walk back through because this is kind of cool, and this is something to talk to my grandchildren about. Oh, that's the neatest in the world. This is just so great. And how many years have you owned it?
I'd say a little bit better than a year and a half.
Isn't this? And most of the stuff that's in here was in here when you bought it?
All of it was. It's
And
all
this-
part of it.
This desk was built in?
Yep, everything
He
is.
wasn't kidding when he said desk.
Yeah, well, that's what they wanted. As I say, when they purchased it, they wanted it for that, to use it as an office for their RV park. But they're taking a chance. You got such a narrow space here. Somebody walk out and
Take
not
a
paying
flying
attention.
leap. Yeah, good boy. Goodbye, Charlie.
Lose a lot of business that way.
Look at this, the faux brick on the wall.
Yeah, it's got about. I think there's about 8 speakers for the radio.
Modern
stereo.
Modern 1960s era surround sound, huh? Isn't that the greatest? I love it.
All that time it sat there and they're the shape of it. You know?
Now it's yours, and you're sharing it with hundreds and hundreds of other people. You gotta love it.
It's a pleasure to do that.
Thanks, buddy. See you
Thank you
later.
very much.
That's
Right.
great. Absolutely spectacular day, the last Sunday of June 2003, the 5th annual Great Adirondack Antique and Classic Car Show and Health Fair and whatever else they're doing here today. This is the end of our program, and I hope all of you who are watching this had a chance to be here to see it in person. If not, I'll bet you there'll be a 6th annual next year. Thanks to the organizers, the Plattsburgh and North Country Chamber of Commerce. Thanks to Tony Vaccaro and his wonderful organization trying to get that classic and unique Lozier Museum started here in the North Country on the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Thanks to all the antique and classic car owners from all over northern New York and other states. I see way across there an old camping trailer, little tiny teeny camping trailer. After we just saw that prototype motorhome, any kind of vehicle you've ever seen or imagined is here today with an awful lot of people having just a terrific time. We've met hundreds of our friends. We met a bunch of new people. We met a few Joni James fans, one of my friends that just left, and lots more. Thank you all for watching Hometown Cable, for supporting what we do. Contact Calvin if you'd like to give some money to support this idea. We need all kinds of underwriters because this is our labor of love, ensuring what we see through our eyes with the rest of the North Country. If you want to perpetuate it, call Calvin at 298-4663, Hometown Cable on the Ridge Road in Champlain, and let him know that you like it. Stop us on the street and give us an idea for another show. We'll just about go anywhere and do anything and meet anybody if we can have a good time doing it. And who knows where we're going to be next time.